Karen Sullivan here, Soul Symbols, Astrology and Tarot, and I'm here to look at the forecast for the week, the astrological forecast, but the main one I want to look at, because there's so much richness to it, is Saturn stationing today, retrograde in Aries. So we have had Saturn in Aries since the 25th of May 2025. And it will ingress in this retrograde period on the 1st of September back into Pisces. And then it won't be back into Aries until mid-February 2026. So what we've had here since the 25th of May is a dress rehearsal for who and what Saturn is in Aries. So Aries is, it's a sign of the spring. It's the temple of Mars. Saturn and Mars get on extremely well. Mars is exalted in one of Saturn's signs in Capricorn. So we have this sense, both planets are called malefic in that they bring very difficult tension to bear, but these are necessary. We can have difficulties, suffering, pain, restrictions, stoppages, pauses, but these things can be looked in from a higher perspective as, really beneficial to us and to our journey and to the deepening of our characters, our sense of soul, and our sense of maturation, discipline, and growth. So Aries, as I said, it's the sign of spring. It's where the spring equinox happens. It's the light becoming dominant up until the summer solstice on the 21st of June. So it's that time when everything is springing to life. It's fire. It's the ram. It's that kind of fertile, energetic time of year within nature where buds are bursting through what we planted out in the winter. Our bulbs are all springing out. It's a beautiful time, and the ram is very horny. Basically, he's off to make some baby lambs. So yeah, that's the kind of, and the ram will butt heads. It will push through to get its territory. So with Saturn sitting here, we do have a bit of a tension, although it's quite natural with Mars as the other malefic planet, and it's happy with the energetics that way with Mars. There's a tension because Saturn is the great restrictor, the limit. He limits, he constricts, he restricts, he says no. There's a lot going on. Whereas the energy of Mars is wanting to burst through into passion, action, with virility, with new beginnings. It's kind of more of a poor energy, whereas the youthful, exuberant, passionate energy. Whereas Saturn is the senex, the old man, the wisdom, the end of life, the closure of life, death, all those happy things. So we have this combination, kind of butting heads, using the ram analogy, within Aries. And also Saturn Aries, we have Neptune, and Neptune is very contrary to Saturn, where Saturn is the boundary maker. Neptune is the boundless, that urge and push towards blissful union into oneness. So we have those two. So I'm going to talk a little about all of these things and bring in some analogies of how this can be looked at and how you might be able to work with it. And this is something that's happening, although it's starting this week, it is happening over a long period of time. When we've looked at them, I will then go sign to sign, and we will look at what themes and topics that you're going to be looking at, whether you start with your sun, moon, or rising. But I do suggest you start with your rising sign because it's all about you. That will be at the end. I will have all the timestamps. I will have all the chapters written down so you can jump about if you want to, or just listen to the whole thing. Okay. According to the Groth-Tarnus perinatal sequence, Saturn is the stage of birth where the cervix isn't open and labour begins, so that the pressure to bear comes upon the child in the womb. Restriction, compression, bringing a sense of being trapped, confinement within a circumstance, which is a necessity if the child is to be born. And for the mother, the contractions begin. they're felt in her body, and she knows there's no way out of it. The sense of no escape, and that this process has to be seen through to the end. Saturn is like this. His seriousness and solemnity, his gravitas, is brought to bear on material reality. As he restricts and constrains, he brings limitations and boundaries in order to bring a process to completion, to the moment of birth. And when that pressure is on, it's heavy. But just like the beginning stages of labour, the contractions that open the cervix, and his work is to bear down on us in life, to give restrictions and constrictions, but he's teaching us wisdom. He's building strong foundations. Just as the mother's contractions open the cervix, Saturn opens the way to the liminal spaces, whilst that pressure is brought to bear, and a time to fully enter into the thoughts, feelings, and processes that surround us internally, externally, or more often both. He provides a time to become fully present in our lives, to look for the light, to understand that there is always a way out, but that necessity holds you in a place of preparation for the next stage. And so it's best to contemplate the pressures, the restrictions, the no of Saturn, the heaviness in your chest, the overwhelming need to escape, often coloured by anxiety or fear. Contemplate them in your meditations, in your liminal spaces, because that is where you will find Saturn's wisdom, amazing wisdom and knowledge about manifest reality and his role in bringing that to bear. So it's no surprise that Saturn finds his joy in the 12th house, known in ancient astrology as the house of Malus Daemon, meaning the house of bad spirit. And that's because it had no aspect to the ascendant. The house which has themes of bad luck, self-undoing, hidden enemies, sickness, isolation, exile and imprisonment. Modern astrology has assigned seclusion, the unconscious, escapism and mysticism to the list. But there is no doubt that the 12th house requires reflection, both self-reflection and contemplation of our outer reality, and more important, an openness to that which is hidden in us, our unconscious, the shadow content. It is hiddenness and dark places, the difficult places where Saturn finds his joy. And if you have a strong Saturn placement in the 12th house, you often, after much contemplation, understand what it is like to live in the belly of Kronos, the god of time who ate his children. So Saturn rules both Capricorn and Aquarius and is exalted in Libra. But let's focus on Capricorn, the sign of the builder, the climber. Not only is it the gateway of the gods, Saturn's association with necessity brings a lifetime preparation for our departure, for the life after this, through that gateway. Saturn sets about building deep foundations and building them well on good soil, on good ground. If you think about how solid buildings are constructed, that first stage is to dig down and prepare the ground for the foundations. And so Saturn will often put the pressure on digging up faulty foundations or restricting building on bad ground without the proper preparation. So transport that analogy to your life. When there's difficulty, restriction, suffering, contemplate the foundations built within your inner world, your identity, your characteristics. Look at the resources, financial affairs, your environment, family and relationships. Contemplate when any area of reality is affected, is strained, or causes fear or anxiety. We often turn away from the difficulties, sometimes into escapism via addictions, distractions, or even total denial, to avoid facing some harsh truths about ourselves and our lives, and miss the opportunity to work with Saturn's agenda, only to find later on down the line that same cycle of difficulty arrives. We also need to be aware that often the foundations we live our lives through were dug and built by others, our families, teachers, and cultures, societies we grew up in. These formative experiences are often the software we operate with, and often we need an update. And Saturn is there to do that. It will alter those foundations, it'll alter our software. Personally, I see Saturn as the force of alignment who slowly moves in and aligns us to our higher selves, the best expression we have to give, by bringing us the truth about ourselves and our way of being in this reality. He can express as a strict father who disciplines, sometimes with a cane, or the wise grandfather who directs and corrects. But how he turns up in our lives depends greatly on how we perceive him, and therefore engage or run away from him. But he will administer what is necessary for the greater good until we surrender to his wise but often difficult lessons and learn to make the necessary adjustments. But this is a slow moving planet whose cycle is around 29 years. And it's often only in hindsight that we recognise his necessary footprints in our lives upon our first or second Saturn return. And with Saturn currently sat with Neptune, so we have that Neptunian energy which relates to the time in the womb where we were at one with our mother, that kind of blissful union floating about in the waters of the womb. No contractions, no birthing, just that beautiful oneness. And that is a feature of people, that they want that oneness. And I was thinking of the waters of the womb, and I'm thinking of the waters of the ocean, those huge oceans, and where they connect with the land, which is Saturn in the material. So it's that materiality of Saturn, you know, the solidness. So the trees, the plant life, the soil, the rocks, and where the sea encroaches on that, it makes salt marshes. So what we have there, we end up with a place where biodiversity grows, because there are hidden, as the vegetation breaks down the earthy stuff, the waters there become nutrient enriched, and you have rare species come. They have places to hide. They have nurseries for their offspring where they are safe from the openness of the ocean and the predators on land, to a degree. So, and then that brings in biodiversity. It creates a chain of creation that is rich and does so much for the environment. And this Neptunian meeting Saturn is like that. It's the two things, the water and the earth coming together, that sense of the material and the emotional coming together. And there may be huge pressure. You may feel swamped and kind of drowning in what's going on. But this is the place where you can expand, where you can create. All creativity has to have that natural tension. It is the tension that encourages you to explore, contemplate. You're open to inspiration. So those, if you look at that salt marsh, that is kind of a sense of a liminal space where you can reach out to spirit, reach out, you know, to your higher self source, reach within yourself, the depths of your soul, and find that creativity through the tensions that are happening externally, or maybe internally as well. But those pressures, when there is constriction, restriction, there's overwhelm, this is where the creativity comes. So it's beautiful, and Saturn is dancing with Neptune. It is in Aries at the moment, and both will retrograde back into Pisces again to kind of redo. We've had an opening show of these slow moving planets, you know, Neptune being an outer planet, and so that is sitting there with Saturn, who was, until the discovery of the outer planets, the outer planet, hence the gateway of the gods, you know, the last place of the material. So there's this opportunity to have a look at this kind of opening act of Saturn and Neptune in Aries. Saturn went in on May 2025. So we've had several months, and Saturn will ingress Pisces again, and then it will return and they won't go back. So there's that sense of we've had a preview, the same as we're having a preview with Uranus, and the movement of all these outer or slow moving planets into aspect with one another
it is a dress rehearsal for something bigger that's coming to us, not just individually, but it's coming on the world stage. There will be global shifts in our planet, in our sense of consciousness, in what we find out. There will be a global split, and we will be able to see the nature of everything that's going on. Where we were confused or things were hidden, we are going to get a sense of what exactly is going on and what our place is in that picture. So you people out there who are, you know, working with healing, working with the spiritual, this is a place that you need to focus on, that you are being rearranged, reorganized. Your consciousness is maybe expanding, but under that pressure that is around you. We have Neptune, that boundless, that yearning for that dissolving into the ocean of all that is. So we have the boundaried and the boundaryless. So we're looking at our rigidity of who we are. You know, are we more Saturnian? Are we rigid in how we see ourselves, our roles, our place in the world? Is there a restriction where we're clinging to what is safe, what is known? Or are we going into that boundlessness, kind of not having any boundaries, a kind of escapism into spirituality? It is a real call for alchemy and entering into the liminal space to create innovation, to be creative, deeply creative. It's a call for creative embodiment of bringing the spiritual into the physical. Yeah. You may find constrictions, restrictions, limitations, either in yourself, in your soul, in your relationships, your jobs, all your material circumstances, in your finances. It's dependent on where the placement is. So if you are finding that, or a looseness where, a looseness of boundaries, that I'm going to serve everyone and care for everyone, and, my needs are not important, if you push that way or escape them into spirituality, then you're going to find yourself undone if you're at either ends of those polarities. But what it calls for is that bringing harmony. Aries is initiation. We're being initiated into a new way of being, a new way of embodying and functioning within the world. For us to look at how we relate in the world to one another, to our environment. How do we do that? How are we carrying that out? It's like the ecosystem of a wetland. You've got the vegetation, the grass. You've got the water. Now those places, the swamplands, the wetlands, they hold safe spaces within the vegetation for small species to thrive. A biodiversity that brings in other species. So it is creative. The tension of the vegetation, the land, that threshold of the land and the water is bringing that place where newness, innovation, new creation can come in. So look at your life in terms of a wetland. What is your vegetation? How can that provide a safe space to nurture small things, perhaps at first? Who else what are you looking at to bring into your sphere? What are you looking at to make this kind of vision, or this goal that you have to become material? What in your spirit, in your soul, are you trying to develop? What parts of you, your shadow and your light, what can you bring in to create that alchemy between your shadow? This is where the gold is. This is where the gold of our souls are. Saturn is lead, okay? Aries is the exaltation of the sun. That's the gold. So we are really being called to turn our lead into gold in that respect. So the things that are heavy, that drag us down, that base us just in the material, we're being asked to bring it cosmically over that threshold, to sit in that liminal space of what was, or what is solid and what is imaginal, what is out there. How can we bring that practicality to those things, that balance to that things, to bring that creative energy into our lives? It's also in sextile to Uranus at the moment. So, Uranus loves to, the great awakener, the great disruptor. They've got a lovely sextile flow of energy there. So Saturn is empowered in a sense with that. They are both empowered in that sextile. So there's that breaking up of the foundations in order to build the new. And that new will be a new strengthened you, strengthened relationships. It's an embodiment into this world. It's spiritual in the sense that it comes from beyond the material, but we are here to embody, to live life to the full. And that the gravitas of Saturn, that pressing down, that bearing down, is so that we can be born, so that the openings do come.
So what is it I need to do for myself? What do I need to do within myself? And in terms of practicalities, to be able to live within the material world, to be connected to spirit and to my soul in order to be useful and of service to the people around me, those I'm called to serve, whether it's a person, a relationship, a family, animals, the environment. I need to put my own oxygen mask on before I can help other people. My practical needs have to be met, the lunar needs, the daily needs, before I can be of use to anyone or anything. So those are the delineations for the retrograde Saturn in Aries conjunct Neptune, and also for the aspects with Uranus. And I haven't spoke about the sextile to Pluto. There was too much there already. So what I'm going to do now is to go through the houses with all those things I've spoken about kept in mind. Hello, Aries, Sun, Moon and Rising. So this Saturn retrograde is happening in your first house. So that's everything about you, your life, your body, your character, your spirit, your sense of essence. It's also on your angles, it's the house of Dharma, along with the 5th and the 9th house. So it's about purpose, it's about what you're here for. So depending on your view of your life, what is going on in your life, that pressure in any area of your life, because it's all about you, your finances, your home, your family, your job, your relationships, there will be pressure being brought to bear, and particularly family relationships and work, because it's an angled house. Okay. So you also have the Uranus sitting in your 3rd house, right? So that 3rd house is the house of your everyday life, your environment, your your work a day, the things you do, your daily routines, communication, how you interact with those in your direct environment. And then you have, I know I didn't talk about the Pluto, but you have Pluto in your 11th house, which is groups, communities, hopes, dreams, wishes. So Pluto will be upending them, bringing things up from the depth in those. So between the environment and, the groups, we're talking about your interactions with others. So it may be that Saturn in your 1st house is bringing to bear this pressure on who you are as a person, how you interact within groups, how you work with your hopes, your dreams, your wishes. It could be with Neptune there in that 1st house, that you have become kind of idealistic, that you are dreaming a lot and not working a lot, not bringing them into reality. That could be the sense, but it could also be that because you're Aries and you're that spring energy of vitality, action, passion, it could be with Mars in your 6th house that you are working really hard at all these things. So there's a sense for you that there would be questions about, with Neptune there and it being the house of Dharma, like, what is my purpose in this world? What am I here for? What am I here to do? So it really is a sense of your identity, your essence, your place in the world, but particularly in your local environments. And Uranus in your local environment will be bringing, it's a disruptor. So you may move into a different environment. You may decide, like, for your health, the environment is not good, and your
ruler Mars is in the 6th house. That is also about health. So it's in a square to Uranus. It could be that disruption there. It could be disruptions to how you communicate, how you receive communication. It could be sudden changes in the way you communicate. With the Saturn and Neptune there in the 1st, it could be that Saturn is building those foundations of communication whilst Uranus disrupts that communication. This can be the actual way you communicate with other people, and other people communicate with you, but it could also be as in technology. So all those things could be going on for you. But the question and the tensions that are arising is where you need to look at our Aries. So what is coming under pressure in your life? What area is affecting you as a person, is bringing that kind of, the need to escape, the need to want to get out of wherever you are, be it in your environment, in your groups, or your hopes and wishes not materializing. It could be that Saturn is digging up those foundations, giving you new sense of hopes, wishes. You may be changing direction with how you want your life to go, how you want to be seen in the world. It could be as simple as a health regime, as in, better diet, better exercise. You might be working out at the gym. But it's that sense of having that, using that tension between your ideals, your hopes, your dreams, your imagination, and bringing that balance with reality. What is achievable? How far can you go with this? Have you got the resources to bring those hopes and dreams into reality? So it's not negating either of those. It's holding the tension of that. And I think that Saturn and Neptune are going to bring you over the course of this retrograde, and when they ingress back into Aries, which is it's not till February, mid-February, they will redo, review, reset, as they go back into Pisces to finish off any of that business in your 12th house that was happening between March 2023 and May of this year. So think over that time scale. Was there anything going on that has changed the foundations? Have you had insights into your unconscious where Saturn has built in foundations? Because Saturn will and is very good at materializing what is in your unconscious. Okay, and that will be brought forward into your life, into the physical, into who you are, what your life is comprised of. So when Saturn goes back into Pisces, you may feel that there are more hidden things that kind of exposed to you. That's from September until February of next year. So that period of time, Saturn will be finishing off. He may be bringing things to mind that you can redo again, whatever you've been doing these last few months, since May, 25th of May, until today. What's been building? Have a look where the pressures are, have a look at your ideals and your dreams, and be creative with that tension, that wetland, that creative place where those two things meet. There is a mass of support there for you to break through, particularly if what you are trying to do is in your local community with groups or groups of people. Okay, so keep going at it, Aries. You're going to have massive breakthroughs. Okay, that's what I have for you, Aries. Taurus. So this Saturn retrograde is happening in your 12th house. So this is the house of the hidden enemies. It can be isolation. If you go back and listen to the talk of Saturn's Joy in the 12th house, you'll have a much better kind of breadth of topics to work with there. But what Saturn often tries to do within that 12th house is to bring into material the things that are hidden. Okay, so he will materialize in front of you that the sense of imagination, of dreams, of your unconscious mind. There will be that shift from unknowing to knowing. So you may have cycles and patterns of behavior that go round and round and you can never seem to break out of. There could be addiction, or there could be this sense of escapism, and that will be heightened as well with Neptune there. Okay, so that sense of escapism. So Saturn will be working away to dig and dig deep. This is deep digging. And he will bring into material, by the end of his transit there, a real understanding of what lays hidden within your life, your circumstances, your subconscious. It may be that you move more into a spiritual discipline. That can be as simple as dream journaling or active imagination. You may need to go and speak to a therapist in terms of what is coming up from the depths. You may find you have memories appearing, but all these things, if you use a journal and you watch them and you write them down, spend 5 minutes a day or half an hour at the weekend, kind of jotting down or voice note them, and find out exactly what is shifting from the inner. Now, you have Uranus, which is in a trine to this Saturn retrograde, and you have your ruling planet, Venus, in your second house. So that is money and resources. Then Pluto, the great kind of Pluto, that is the great. He's lord of the underworld. He's about wealth. He's about wealth of our inner wealth, our inner resource, our inner. So he's sat up there in the 10th house, in your public house. So you've got this wonderful, to Saturn retrograde, you've got this beautiful sextile Pluto to Saturn and Neptune, and you've got a sextile in Gemini from Uranus, the great disruptor, the great awakener, with your ruling planet in your second house. So it seems that there may be, these are both where Pluto is and where Uranus is, that they are both about the mind, of communication, spirit. It's air, okay? It's an air energy feeding into that fire energy. And Saturn would have been doing a work at your foundations already. So you may feel you've had an upturn in the unconscious material becoming conscious, but have a look at what is happening there, okay? Because Saturn will be moving back into Pisces on the 1st of September and won't return until the 14th of February. So that is your 11th house, Pisces. That is your hopes, your dreams, your wishes. It's about groups. It's about your community, okay? So allow Saturn to finish off that work there, but reflect on what has been occurring since the 25th of May. What is Saturn showing you in terms of your foundations? Okay. And then, any pressure that's being brought to bear, any disruption, any chaos in terms of your finances and your public face, or how you see yourself. It could be that you have a sense of, imposter syndrome. You don't feel you're up to what you need to do in your work, in your public face. You may not feel you're deserving of money and your resources, so you may be taking a lower paid job when you are much more capable. So these patterns, Saturn will be kind of collaborating with both Pluto to bring transformation and Uranus to break up the foundations, and it will be in that sense of thinking, communication. They could be old patterns, that were built in you as a child. You may have lived in a home where there wasn't a huge amount of money, where money was tough. There may be certain things that you feel you need to do to get that stability that Taurus often needs. Taurus is a needer of that stability, of that material stability, of love and relationship, that kind of Venusian feel, the luxury. But it may be that, somewhere in your unconscious, you've had patterns form. So I spoke earlier about how Saturn is very happy to change our programming, the programming that has been added on, not because it's who we are or what we actually think, but because it is programmed into us by our family, by our teachers, by our peer groups, society, our culture. So As Saturn moves back into Pisces to do his finish up all the unfinished business of Pisces, take note of things that are happening, things that are bubbling up, okay? Because it is reviewing. Saturn is reviewing. He is redoing, resetting. He's probably made the first dig at the foundations, but when he comes back, he'll be, beginning to pour the concrete in and laying them over that 2-year period that Saturn is going to remain. So Saturn remains for about 2.5 years on average in one sign. So this is not a fast work. Saturn's slow moving. So when he returns, he will start to build more solid foundations there. Okay, so that's what I've got for you, Taurus. Hello, Gemini. So the Saturn retrograde is happening for you in your 11th house, as is the conjunction with Neptune, which is about hope, wishes, ambition. It's the house of good fortune, the joy of Jupiter. So that's wonderful. Yeah, it's favourable. Okay, it's a really good place for Saturn to be. So you've also got, which is, huge in sextile with Saturn. You have Uranus, and this is in your first house, and this is the great awakener, the great disruptor. Okay. Uranus tends to causes huge disruption, and that will be to who you are, or who you think you are, your identity, your character, your body, your health, everything about you, and how you are in the world. Okay, so Saturn had previously been in your 10th house of public face, your public space, your vocation, your what you do out in the public. And then we have Pluto that I didn't talk much about in your 9th house, which is higher learning. It's the spiritual, development, the beliefs, our faith, philosophy. So, these are all in aspect with Saturn at the moment. So Saturn is going back through your house of hopes and dreams and wishes, accompanied by Neptune, who is the great imaginer, really huge imagination, that kind of bliss in terms of spirituality, that oneness, that big unity. But, it's about that oneness, that symbiosis. But we've got Saturn there's, contracting all that. So it's doing a work in terms of groups that you're connected with, okay? So as it stations retrograde, it's been in there since the 25th of May. So think about what's happened between now and May, just gone, 2025. Have there been things in your foundation shifting? Has there been, a sense of unsettledness and pressure and restriction and limitation when it comes to your hopes, your dreams and your wishes, particularly around the public, because, in your vocation, because Saturn had been there for 2.5 years previous to when it came into Aries. And this could also be, because Uranus, is going to shape the foundations of who you are and your beliefs about yourself. Pluto in that 9th house could be transforming your beliefs about you. It sits in a lovely trine, so they're both air, and it has a lot to do with the mind, with communication. It could be how you're communicating to yourself. It could be that you don't believe you can aspire to those huge dreams you have. It could be that Saturn is saying, yes, you're worthy of those dreams, but you actually need to build the foundations. You need to have that sense of reality. Have you got the resources? Have you got the abilities? Do you need to skill up with Pluto there in the 9th? Perhaps you see yourself doing, that's the house of astrology, becoming an astrologer or working spiritually or becoming a teacher and a mentor or working within higher education or getting, an accreditation in higher education so that you can live out those dreams. And it could be that you want to work with groups or groups of people, that you want to be able to support that. But what needs to happen is a transformation of the beliefs, the way you think. You could have an internal critic who, whilst you dream and hope and wish, tells you, no, you're not having it. And we got, you know, Uranus in your first house will bring that kind of chaotic energy. It will support in that sextile Saturn of breaking up the foundations of your sense of identity. So yeah, this is a beautiful transit. Watch as it goes back in. It will get into Pisces on, hang on. Oh, the 1st of September. It's going to move out of your 11th house into your 10th house. So Saturn is redoing. It's probably, you know, resetting, reviewing the work that it's been doing there since May. So from May till now, look at what has changed, you know, within groups of people, within your hopes, your wishes, your dreams, your aspirations, you know, the good you want to see come into you in your life. Have a look at what has been changing there, because Saturn will go back into your 10th. He'll do some, you know, last minute sealing off. He's built a foundation there in your public life. So he's going to mop up any unfinished business there and then return again on the 14th of February, Valentine's Day. Okay. And you also, the other thing, your ruling planet, which is Mercury, is sat in your 3rd house, which is environment. It's your daily life. It's your neighbours, your extended family. So yeah, those groups could be those groups. Okay, they could be. That's in a fire. It's trine. Yeah, it's trine. So there's a lovely flow. Mercury won't be there long in Leo, but he is sat there now, and I'm delineating now. So this is kind of a pattern of what will go ahead as Saturn goes into its retrograde movement back into Pisces. So have a look at every type of group that you're involved with. What are your desires, your wishes? Where is attention? Where there's limitation, pressure? There could be difficulties with other people in those areas. Have a look at that tension. Where are you being restricted? Where are you being pushed in? You know, and with Neptune, that you know, it's imagination, dreams, mysticism, ideals. So tap into that and put the two together, the actual limitation, the constriction, the reality of the world with that imaginal world of Neptune. Find that tension, then find within your groups, your hopes, your wishes, how you can build something solid. The reality, you know, the nuts and bolts of how you do that, how you bring that dream into your body through your work, through your mind, through your communication. Okay then, Gemini, that's what I have for you. Hello, Cancer. So this Saturn retrograde will be happening in your 10th house, which is your public face. It's your job, your vocation, how you are out in the world, whether it's in your community or in your job, in your local environment. So Saturn is working from now until September to review the beginnings of the foundations that were put in there at the end of May. So what changes have there been, you know, in the way you do things? What changes in your ideals, thinking Neptune, your dreams, you know, your imagination? Now, Saturn is going to go back into Pisces, and that is your 9th house. So that is finishing up anything that was done in that 9th house over a 2.5 year, thereabouts, approximate period of time. Now, the 9th house is about your faith, your belief, philosophy. It's about higher learning. It could be that you, over those 2.5 years when Saturn was in Pisces, that there were foundations built in terms of what you learn about. You may have taken higher education, a course which has changed the way you present in public. You may have had a complete change of career over the last few months, and you're trying to build your base, your foundation there in your public face, in your vocation. It may have been, you know, huge changes happened for you over the last few months. But with Saturn retrograding back into your 9th house, there may be some tweaks, you know, some unfinished business. It could be that your ideals you had while you were learning over those 2.5 years haven't quite worked out. Could be that you moved abroad to work, or you have married someone abroad, someone of a different culture. But whatever those changes that went on over those 2.5 years, the last bits are going to be solidified, brought into the material, made solid, so that when Saturn returns again into your 10th house, your public face, your vocation, job, how you interact publicly, it will really start laying the concrete there. So with your Neptune there, it could be that your dreams of what you can do out there in the world, there is a tension between getting those ideals, those dreams, what you imagined, into solid reality. This is the tension that you will have to work with in terms of your public face, vocation, career out in public. And you have that Uranus in a lovely sextile, but that is in your 12th house. So it is awakening you, awakening your your unconscious. So again, that will be working in your imaginal realm, in your dream realm. It could be bringing some chaos that you're not quite understanding. It's very difficult to see the themes of the 12th house. It is a hidden house, but it is the joy of Saturn. So they will work together, both Uranus, to kind of break through any concrete which is preventing you bringing whatever it was you learn and experience, any changes that were made over the last 2.5 years, to bring them into a different expression where you feel free and you feel liberated to be who you are, to be able to express yourself out in public, in your job, or your vocation. But it will probably bring a real sense of self, a real sense of who you are, what your work is. It's in an Arta house, which is, the work you're born to do, so to speak. So it may be that you get, a lot of confidence. And it is fire. You have fire here in your 10th house. So yeah, you have that fiery passion to move, to have action. And with your moon, the ruler of your house, that is sitting with Pluto. And, Pluto is going to be the transformer there in your 8th house. So we're talking, foundations being built that are going to be solid, that are going to take you forward, that are going to make a difference to your finances, to your income, to your resources. And it may take that hard work. It may be a work of service you're doing. It may be that you have had a profound change in, beliefs about the world and what the world is about. You could be involved in activism out there in the world, but have not had the confidence, or have had the ups and downs, that the moon brings, that phasal change. You may have risen up very confident and then gone down as the moon waned. But you'll be used to that kind of fluctuations in your emotions. So I think you are going to have that tension between bringing into reality whatever foundations were built there in your beliefs, your philosophy, your learning, your faith. And you will gain that strength to build those firm foundations of those ideals. But there will be that tension between your ideals, your dreams, your imagination, and, dealing with the feelings around there. You need to deal with the feelings because you've got that fiery 10th house. So look at those tensions, look at where there is pressure, look where Saturn is bearing down, particularly when it arrives back on Valentine's Day, back in Aries, because that will be the work it is doing. So have a look from now until September, what's coming up to be reviewed in terms of your foundation with your public life, and then, work with it when it returns in February. Okay, Cancer, that's what I have for you. Hello, Leo. So you have this Saturn retrograde happening in your 9th house. So that 9th house is about, it's the joy of the sun. It's the temple of the sun, which is wonderful because the sun is the ruler of your 1st house, your ruler, the ruler of your chart.
it's currently sat in the 12th house, so it will be supporting you there to kind of illuminate the hidden things about yourself and about, things that you need to know. Illumine your unconscious programming, thought patterns, inner critics, enemies, which can be yourself. It's hidden enemies as well, or illumine things like your vitality. Anyway, back to Saturn. This is in your 9th house, and it will spend approximately 2.5 years in your 9th house. So with the 9th house, we're talking about faith, religion, philosophy, higher learning, traveling to distant lands, foreign travel, foreign lands, foreign people, different cultures. So there's a foundation being laid here, or has been since the 25th of May when Saturn moved in, around those topics and themes. Okay. And we also have Uranus that I mentioned in the long top talk, the great disruptor, the great awakener, sitting in your 11th house of hopes, dreams, wishes, and groups. So it could be, you have it in your heart that you want to travel. Maybe you're traveling with a group. You may be taking up higher education. You may be changing your philosophy on life, your belief system. It may be that there is great disruptions to groups in terms of they may change over this period of the next 2.5 years. But Saturn has given a bit of a show over the last almost 3 months. And we'll be kind of resetting until September, reviewing what the foundations that are being dug out. Could be that it's been a bit of a bulldozer moment for you with that Uranus sat in your 11th house. You may be aspiring that Neptune conjunction with Saturn. It could be that you've got hopes and dreams about your education, about foreign travel. It could be that you have met someone who lives abroad and you're trying to negotiate, travel between one another, or, internet meetings, or if the relationship has gone further, you may want to get together. So you may be considering a move abroad. Okay. So think about those things and topics. Think about where the foundations have been dug up, where there is a kind of shaking and disrupting of your hopes and dreams. Those tensions, Saturn would be pushing and bearing down on those areas in order to make sure whatever your hopes, dreams, wishes, whatever your philosophy, whatever you're studying is going to build a solid foundation for you. Okay. So we have Saturn in September moving back into your 8th house, Pisces, where that was for 2.5 years. So there'd be a lot of changes there. It is the house associated with death. It's associated with other people's money, but big money. So it may be inheritance. You may be waiting for an inheritance to carry forward your dreams of travel or of study. So it will go back into the 8th house on the 1st of September, and it won't return until Valentine's Day back into Aries. But it's going to mop up those issues. So if you have had over the last couple of years, issues, legal issues with money or your partner's money, it's often your partner's money. This is going to be mopped up over the next few months until February 2026. It should be completed, any issues in that area, if you're waiting for that inheritance. So the fact that this is me being a bit romantic, but it's to do with foreign lands. I mentioned that it could be a person, that you're trying to get married to or live with, and you've got, you live in 2 different countries. It could be that inheritance comes through, and that you're able to carry that out. And it's happening on Valentine's Day. Saturn going back. But Saturn will continue with that tension between your ideals, your dreams, your imagination, that Neptune, and
bringing that into reality. So you've got practicality. So there's questions like, what do I need to do practically to bring, that connection? The ninth house is to do with the divine, God, it's the house of God. What do you need practically? Are there spiritual disciplines you need? Are there ways that are blocked in you with the sun in your 12th? It may be looming areas where you're blocked, but to bring that and the imagination ideals into the reality, this is what Saturn will be doing in your ninth house. So you need to be very practical as well as that dreamy Neptune. Yeah, but if you're working the tension of the both, so you're dreaming, you're aspiring to maybe getting a master's degree or a doctorate, but the practicalities are your time, your limitations. That's the Saturnian, the Saturn stuff. I haven't got enough money. I haven't got enough this. I haven't got enough time. I've got children that I need to get looked after. So look at all those practicalities. Don't just dream and forget about them. There's that tension that needs to be balanced, and Saturn, as I say, will be working away with it. It may be with Uranus in that 11th house. It's also the house of benefactors. So it may be that it likes to liberate, it likes to free up, it likes to help you be the person that you are. It could be that a benefactor, someone who can support you, will appear on the scene via, your group social connections. Okay, so there's a lot there, but look at those things and topics. Look at where the pressure is, where the tension is, where you feel you need to escape. Look at your ideals, your dreams, the frustrations. Are they being limited, thwarted? So have a look at all those areas, and I think you'll see where Saturn is building and will, after Valentine's Day, be building for the next just over 2 years. Okay, Leo, that's what I have for you. Hello, Virgo. So you have this Saturn retrograde in your 8th house. So that 8th house, it can be the house of death. It's connected with inheritance. So inheritance from a relative who has died, or issues about inheritance, but it's about that big money. So money, other people's money. And because Saturn is sat there is going to be a huge change in terms of how you view those subjects. So it could be, Saturn is building the foundations for you to look at, for instance, the issue of death in a very different way. You may have been fearful, you may have been avoiding it, but Saturn will come in there and kind of dig down and show you the reality. It may be that you need to face up to that, but also Saturn may be looking at or beginning to build the foundations with how you are with other people's money. Now, you've got Uranus in the 10th house. So that is your public house. It's the house of vocation, career, how you are out in public, your public face. And Uranus is a great disruptor. So it could be that he's only just gone in there, but often he goes in with a bang. So it could be that you've had disruptions in terms of how you're seen publicly, for good or for ill. It could be that your job has been disrupted, that there are disruptions at work. But rest assured, if that has happened, it is so you can be freed up, you can be liberated. With Saturn there in that 8th house, it could be, that your money, you need to look at that chunky money. You need to look at how you can get your resources in to support perhaps changes and shifts in your career, in your vocation. It may be that you haven't been able to do the thing that you really want to do in public, the service to others in public. From where you're at the moment. So that clash between Saturn and Neptune, the ideal, the dream, what are your dreams in terms of that chunky money? How are you going to push into it? It could be you have Pluto in your 6th house, and that's a house of health. It could be that you've had health problems over quite a period of time, a few years. Pluto's been there. It's the house of hard work, illness or health issues. It's the house of employees. And you do have your house ruler Mercury sitting opposite Pluto at the moment. So all these aspects
are working together. Your house ruler is flowing to Uranus and to Saturn and Neptune, and it's in opposition with Pluto. Pluto is the great transformer. So if you've had health problems, if there's been medical negligence or accidents, it could be with that chunky money in the 8th house where Saturn is, that is going to come through, that you may get medical compensation. Now, Saturn will retrograde and leave Aries on the 1st of September into Pisces, which is your house of relationships, often intimate relationships. It's the things you do after dark. It's all about pleasure, relationships when the sun goes down, that type of thing. So it could be that as Saturn retrogrades in there, that your partner, your intimate partner or your work partner actually comes into some money, which will help you deal with your situation and get those breakthroughs in your public life, you know, in your vocation or your job, those breakthroughs. It may be that your job is fundamentally changing because Uranus will be pushing for you to have independence and freedom and express the way you truly are, be who you truly are, is that rebel. So you have those things going on, but also with your house ruler in the 12th, be open to things. Mercury is a psychopomp who goes up to the gods on Mount Olympus and down to Hades. So he he travels down to your unconscious and brings messages up. So be open to any messages that your ascendant ruler brings to you, because it will have profound effect on you. Okay, could be that secrets have been revealed. We've got Uranus in a sextile to Mercury, so it could be that, you know, hidden things have come up for you, which are very difficult to deal with. But be open to the messages that Mercury brings you. Don't be in a mindset where you think you know what's happened. Be open to different interpretations from Mercury there, because being in opposition to Pluto, there's great transformation for you there, Virgo. Okay, so Saturn will be going into that 7th house, and it could be mopping up any situations you have in relationships. So the foundations that were built for 2.5 years in your 7th house Pisces, you know, whatever situations have been going on with your nearest and dearest, your loved ones, there will be a time between the beginning of September until Valentine's Day, when in 2026, the 14th of February, when it will be clearing up, tying up those loose ends. But yeah, there's a real sense of personal breakthrough. And sometimes those breakthroughs come from, you know, messages, your Mercury in the 12th, messages from your unconscious, secrets being revealed that are difficult, you know. But take heart, because you will be able to work through those things. You will come to the truth. Uranus is a very much a truth bringer, and that will be public, you know, that will be Uranus in your 10th is working in the public sphere. So those shifts and changes, the disruption, the chaos, whatever is going on at the moment, by about February 2026, you should be in a much better place with that. And as I said, if it's to do with finances, that chunky money could be coming through. If it's compensation, if it's inheritance, other people's money, it could be coming through, you know, around February 2026. Okay, Virgo, that's what I have for you. Hello, Libra. So this Saturn retrograde is happening in your 7th house. So the 7th house is about your intimate relationships, often your marriage or your closest partner, your nearest and dearest in that sense. Can also be about the consummation of affairs. So that kind of end point, that bringing to a close. Okay, so have a look at what has been changing within your relationships. Is there a relationship which is coming to a close, that is coming to a finish? Is there a relationship being consummated through marriage, through moving in, through, you know, a large change there? But Saturn will be working away. So have a look from 25th of May until now. what sort of things have been changing there, okay? And so it's going back into Pisces, your sixth house, and that will happen on the 1st of September and stay there until Valentine's Day. So a beautiful time for Saturn to move back, but it will be clearing up unfinished business in Pisces, and that's your sixth house. It is the house of health, hard work, employees. It was called the House of Bad Fortune, and it was there for 2.5 years previously. So look at what foundations did Saturn build there, because Saturn will be finishing off that between September and February of next year, mopping up any messes there and laying in the concrete so that that can be built on. So if that's your health, if that's your work, you know, there will be kind of conclusions of that. You'll know where you are with those things by the time February comes. And what else we have here of note is that Saturn is in a lovely trine with Uranus, and Uranus is in your ninth house. And it is sat there with Venus, your house ruler, your first house ruler. So there's a sense here Uranus is the house of disruptor, the house of disruptors. Uranus is the great disruptor, the great awakener. It causes a kind of chaos. It upends everything so that it can bring you into liberation and freedom. That is the purpose of Uranus. A bit messy, a bit like, you know, a lightning strike and then the cleanup afterwards. But it is to bring you into liberation. So with your Venus sat here, we could be talking a disruption to harmony, to balance, and particularly in the areas of your faith, belief, philosophy, spiritual practices, higher learning, travel. So you expect those kind of disruptions there, but it's working with a trine. So it will also be working to liberate you in all those areas, Uranus in your ninth. And Saturn will be, you know, having that kind of ease and flow to bring through those changes, that digging of the foundation, the breaking up of the foundations if they're old. And this will be in the area of your relationships. So it could be your beliefs about relationships, how you were conditioned as a child, you know, your experience of your parents' relationships may flavour how you see yourself in relationship or how you relate to partners, particularly marriage partners. So we're looking at those areas where Saturn will be seeking to break up any faulty foundation, any cracks there, and to bring in, you know, solid foundations. And then we have Pluto here in your fifth house, which has been there since 2023, I believe. And Pluto is, you know, the transformer. It brings huge transformation. And this is in your fifth house of children, pleasure, sex, sexuality, and things like gambling. It's a house of pleasure. So this is being transformed, and it is in a sextile with that Saturn. So and it's also in trine with Uranus. These beliefs you may have about, you know, sexuality, about sex in itself, again, could come up for massive transformation, shake up, breaking free of old patterns to do with love, harmony, balance, relationships. Okay, so watch for that. Have a look what happens between now and September as Saturn kind of reviews the work it's done since the 25th of May in this house of relationships for you. Okay, Libra, that's what I have for you. Hello, Scorpio. So this Saturn retrograde is happening in your sixth house, and that's the house of health. It's the house of hard work. It's the house of small animals. It's the house of employees, you know, subordinates, people who work for you, or it could be your position as an employee. So Saturn is retrograde in here and has been building foundations there. Now, it was known as the house of bad fortune, so it could have something to do with your health. So it could be since it
ingressed into your sixth house, and that was the 25th of May, that there have been, Saturn has been highlighting health issues. It may be that your lifestyle with Neptune there, Neptune, it's the planet of escapism. So it can have to do with addictions, uh, drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, whatever. But it could be that Saturn is kind of telling you via your health no, showing you your limitations. If you've been working too hard, if it's having an effect on your body, Saturn will be showing you that. Saturn will do you favors here and help you out here. I mean, it's the ruler of the house is your ruler, which is in the 11th of groups, hopes, wishes. It could be, that in your workplace, you hoped, you dreamed of promotion or expansion if you've got your own business and you've been working hard, but actually Saturn's saying you're going beyond your limits. You need to look at your health, and that can be your physical health and your mental health. It could be that all the hard work you need to escape and you party hard, you play hard, but Saturn's saying, hang on, you need to pull back on that. So you get the picture. You're going to have the tension between that. Saturn will bear down. Saturn will be, discipline, say no, limit you. And that can be in your health or in your work. Whereas Neptune, that sense of, we looked about the labour pains of a woman and the cervix being open, that sense of no escape. So you may feel trapped in that job. And then Neptune's coming in and going, oh, we can escape this way. We can, or you're having huge amounts of dreams and hopes and wishes to kind of reorder your life, get something better that aligns to you more, okay? And as I said, Mars, the ruler of your house and of the house that Saturn is retrograding in, is in your 11th house. And that is your hopes and dreams and wishes. It's also about benefactors. So there could be things coming in that will help you reorganize your work. Saturn may well be working there to ensure you're not overworking and damaging your health. Saturn's limitation, his nose and his pressure that he brings to bear, is to bring you out into, escape, into birth, so whatever foundations he's laying there, it will be to give you wisdom, to give you balance, to bring those hopes and wishes into a reality. And if those hopes and dreams that you have, the imagining, your ideal job and your ideal career path, etc., if they are damaging your health, Saturn will put limitation there. So think about what's been happening in those areas since the 25th of May, okay? And Saturn will be reviewing that. It will come up for review. The digging down he's been doing, the limiting he's been doing, the pressure he's been bringing to bear. That will come up again. You'll be able to see that. And you do have Uranus as well in a trine, sat in your 8th house. And the 8th house is about inheritance. It can be about death. It can be about that chunky money, insurance payouts, redundancy money. Yeah, and as I said, inheritance. So that's sat in a trine, and Uranus is, sudden unexpected things. It can often be sudden and unexpected. It brings massive disruption, chaos. But again, it's to liberate you. So it could be, that Uranus there over the time, and he's there for 7 years in your 8th house, brings that kind of chunky money into you. Perhaps you will get a compensation or insurance payout or inheritance that will free you up to pursue those hopes and dreams and wishes. But we've also, that I didn't talk much about in the main part of this video, we have Pluto sitting here in your 4th house of home, family, roots. So Pluto's going to be doing some, some strong work here, and it's in a strong trine with Uranus in your 8th. So there could be massive changes coming to your family. It could be connected with the work that Saturn and Neptune are doing in your 6th house of health and hard work and employees, okay? But there will be a transformation. It may be triggered by issues around home and family, the place you live, your roots, the family you were born into, what
what you're thinking, because it's air signs. We've got Gemini and Aquarius there that are in trine. That is air, it's communication, it is the mind. So it could be that there are sudden changes or sudden disruptions to home and family, things that are communicated that you didn't know about, about your root family, about your ancestors, about this is often to do with the father, the fourth house. So those things could be coming up that are leaving you in a lot of turmoil. The other thing in the sixth house, it is Mars. So we got to think about Mars in terms of your health in the sixth house. So Mars can cut, Mars can burn, Mars can, you've got to be careful of accidents. Mars can inflame. So take real good health. I don't want to scare anyone, but it's omens in the sky, it's signs in the sky. And this is kind of a signification of Mars, as well as being something that is passionate, that helps you in action and pursuing what you need to pursue. So there's a lot going on. When Saturn moves back into Pisces, that is your fifth home. So whatever's been going on here in your sixth house surrounding your health, if you've been having bad luck or ill health with work, as well, then when Saturn moves back into Pisces, whatever he was doing that's your house of children, it's about pregnancy, it's about pleasure, sex, sexuality. So when he moves back there, he's going to finish, Saturn, any unfinished business that he'd worked 2.5 years on to put the foundations in. So it'd probably be a reminder of what's been built in that house, the joy of children, the intimacy and sexuality, those pleasurable things. But be careful, because Neptune's going back in again, and that's escapism. It can be addiction and drugs and overuse of drugs. But yeah, you're going to have that tension after February, after it's cleaned up in your fifth house of children and sexuality and pleasure, after Saturn has, put the concrete on that and sealed that foundation. He's going to come back to work in that sixth house. So in terms of health, look out where you're overdoing it. Look out where you're partying too hard. Look out where, if you're, having drink, alcohol, drugs, or overdoing things, to a degree of escapism, because there's going to be balance. But look where Saturn is putting the pressure. If it's on your health, look at your health, look at your body, look at your routines. Saturn is a discipliner. He's like a father who disciplines for your own good. So that is the good thing to look at over the next 2 years as Saturn travels through there. That tension, that pressure to bear that he brings will give you an escape route, and you should be in better shape, both in terms of your work and in terms of your health and your luck. Okay, Scorpio, that's what I've got for you. Hello, Sagittarius. So Saturn retrograde is sitting in your fifth house. And this is a house to do with your children primarily, but also with fertility, with creativity, with pleasure, sexuality. And it can be to do with creating businesses. So Saturn has been sat here since the 25th of May, is stationing to go retrograde, and will move out of the fifth house on the 1st of September. So between now and September, you are going to have a review. You're going to have a reset, maybe a redoing. But Saturn's been building foundations in there. So look at what has happened between now. Look at what's happened between the end of May and now, and what foundations, what's been dug up, what is being kind of restrained, constricted. I mean, it could be that you want to have children with Neptune there, those dreams, the imagination, the ideals. And it could be that, you want the children and
Saturn has been helping you build the foundations for that in terms of your environment. You know, you have Pluto there in your third house, which is transformation. So it could be transformation or looking at things you will need to change in your daily routine. And in your daily routine and in your actual environment to accommodate children. It may be that you have children and the ideals of how it would be are kind of being pressurized, bore down on by Saturn. Now, you also have in your seventh house, you have Uranus. And Uranus is the planet of sudden change, breakthroughs, breakdowns, breakthroughs, and often brings kind of a lot of disruption. And it's in your house of relationships. Okay. So we've got this trine to Pluto and the sextile between them all, from Saturn to Uranus and from Saturn Neptune to Pluto. So there's something pretty cathartic going on here in terms of your relationships, and it can be to do with the children. It could be, you know, breakdowns, breakups, sudden changes. It could be that you have recently been through a separation and you are in a different environment and you are transforming that environment to accommodate the children, to build a good foundation for them there. But yeah, it could also just be the building of foundations for those good things. But the other thing with the fifth house, it can be the house of gambling, okay? And we have Jupiter, the ruler of your chart, sitting up there in the eighth house, and it's the eighth house of chunky money. Okay. So, and that is other people's money. So it could be a win from gambling. You could be gambling on the stock market or on the dogs or the horses. But be careful there. It could be that something's out of hand and Saturn is bringing that. Saturn's bringing that pressure to bear to change that. And of course, we have Neptune there, which can spell kind of being unboundaried and spending too much money on your pleasure, whether that's gambling or something else. Okay, so you have a lot going on there. Now, Saturn will move into your fourth house, retrograde back into your fourth house on the 27th of November. Okay, and it will be mopping up there until it returns to Aries on the 14th of February. And now this is the fourth house is your home, your family, your roots. So it can be about, you know, your roots as in your ancestors or your root family, the family you were born into. So Saturn would have been building massive foundations there over the 2.5 years it was there, and it will be going back in there to tie up any loose ends, to put the concrete on the foundations, and you will be building on that. Hence, it's gone to your house of children. So watch for what it mops up, because that's going to, you know, between those dates, between the 27th of November and the 14th of February, because it's going to bring that back into your fifth house, and that should create an atmosphere and something conducive to pleasure, to enjoy in your children, to enjoy in listening to your children and playing with your children and listening to their hopes and wishes, you know. But there will be that tension between ideals, dreams, imagination, and the actual reality. And as I say, with your Jupiter in the eighth house, there could be that temptation to kind of gamble. And yeah, Saturn is going to bring some gravitas to that. So yeah, they're the topics that you need to be looking at. They're the areas you need to look at. You need to kind of hold your hopes, dreams, your imagination, and your you know, the reality, bringing that into the physical. Hold the tensions of those two, because the fifth house is a house of creativity. And if you didn't hear the first part, I was talking about where the water meets the land, and that, you know, that combination of the two, the marshland, the wetland. There is a huge gap over the next 2.5 years while Saturn traverses from February right across Aries. There is a huge chance for you to kind of have some really creative intervals or a creative inspiration that can help you solve problems, or it can help you bring a depth of pleasure. That could just be in your hobbies, you know. So keep your mind open and know that Uranus is transiting your 7th house. Okay, so there may be that chaos in your relationship. So there's quite a lot to balance there. But the bottom line is, once Uranus has finished in your 7th house in about 7 years, you are going to have a sense of freedom, liberty within your relationships. So that's what I have for you, Sagittarius. Hello, Capricorn. So you have this Saturn retrograde in your 4th house. So that is right at the bottom of the zodiac, the 4th house. It is the foundation of all things. So Saturn seems to be quite happy here. If he's digging out the foundations, but it's to do with your roots, everything that you're rooted in your inner world. It's your ancestry, it's your family of origin. It can also be to do with the father, this house, and with Saturn there, it could very well be to do with father issues. So yeah, home, family, everything to do with your private life, whether that's inner or it's literal, your private life at home. Okay, so we've got Saturn retrograde in here. Now, Saturn came in on the 25th of May, and it will depart in its retrograde movement back into Pisces, your 3rd house, on the 1st of September. So have a look from the 25th of May until now. You know, where has the pressure been in terms of home, family, roots, your father? Has there been pressure brought to bear there? Are you restricted, constricted? Perhaps with this focus here with Neptune conjunct, you know, you've got ideals for how your family should be, how your home should be. And you've got wishes, you know, you've got dreams and imagination about what you want to do with your home. It may simply be that you want to expand your home, move your home, change your home. It could be that the literal foundations of your home, there's an issue there, literally, quite literally, because Saturn is very kind of the material. So we could look at that. The other thing that we have this sextile to both Uranus in your 6th house, and that's about health, it's about hard work, it's about employees, and it is sextile to Pluto in your 2nd house of money, resources, values, all your financial things, all the things you need to survive. So if we're looking at that in the 6th house, Uranus is, you know, sudden disruption, sudden change, can be chaotic when it arrives in a zodiac sign or a house. So there could be disruptions to your health, the health of your father or a family member, that is affecting the Pluto 2nd house, which is Pluto is transformation. It could be affecting your income, your finances. It could be that you need to have an elderly father or member of the family move into your home for care. There's all sorts of delineations you can make from this. But the other delineation with Neptune there is this inner life, okay? So it could be that there's a sort of stoicism with you, that you're not opening up to imagination, to dream, to the spiritual side of things, that kind of divine connection, that divine union. So maybe there's a bit of repression with that. Maybe you need to open up more to that. But again, look what's happened between the end of May to now, because Saturn will be bringing pressure. There may be a tension between your need for spirituality, your need for that imaginative world, and for that divine connection. It may not gel with the other people of your family. You may feel kind of pushed out by there. There's that tension. There may be other people in your family who are very kind of practical and disciplined, and so those tensions, and again, you need to bring that creativity in there. These tensions are creative tensions. They're meant to produce a third thing. When there are two opposing things, they are meant to produce a third. So be open to creativity in how you deal with either the issues at home, or maybe health issues because Uranus brings that sudden disruption. If it's the health of a father or an elderly member of your family, be open to creative solutions. Don't be grabbed by the sort of pessimistic side that Saturn can bring. Know that there's a way forward, because in your second house with that Pluto in trine with Saturn and Neptune, and in sextile with Saturn and Neptune, in trine with Uranus, there are cathartic changes coming. There are big changes, there are big transformations. There is a big push on your foundations. There is restraining, constriction, limitation. But the whole point of it is to push you out into the world, birth, whatever this thing is, the third thing. So you have two things in tension, and then it creates a third. Okay, this is Aries, it's in the fourth, but it's Aries, it's the ram, it's that fertility, passion, action, and that may be slowed down at the moment with Saturn there. But again, that tension of wanting action and the possible delays of Saturn, while there might be chaos going on in terms of health and work and transformation to your income, your finances. But know there is a creative solution. Be open to that. Don't kind of cut that off. And Saturn is your ruling planet. So, this is going to profoundly affect you, because this is happening on your angles. Your first house is the home of Saturn. So there is, I think I spoke about the gateway to the gods. If this is in your first house, this is the gateway to the gods. So be open, have that Neptunian, desire for connection. Go to your spirits, go to the divine, go to your ancestors. However you express your spirituality, there's a connection there that can bring inspiration and bring kind of really beautiful solutions, creative solutions to any issues that are there. Okay, so that is what I have for you, Capricorn. Hello, Aquarius. So this Saturn retrograde conjunct Neptune is happening in your third house. So that is the house, it was called in ancient astrology, the house of the temple of the goddess. So it's to do with the moon. It's about your environment, the changing face of your body, of your energy, of your mind, your emotions as you move about in your local environment through your daily routines. So there may be, there may be some digging and pressure that's being brought to bear by Saturn on that area of your life. It could also be because the third house is to do with communication. It's to do with, it can be to do with technology. It can be to do with sisters, brothers, cousins, that extended family, your friends. So it could be happening to someone around you, and you're having to kind of change your routine, change things to support or to be there for them. So this is the kind of feel of it. Now, Saturn, whatever Saturn has been doing in those areas since the 25th of May, he's kind of reviewing it all. So have a look where you feel that pressure, where you feel that gravitas on those situations, where you feel you're being kind of pushed down in, or pushed to be more disciplined in your routines, more kind of stoic and more organized. It could be that you're an unorganized person. These are the sorts of things you need to be looking at, because this is what is coming up for review and redoing. So Saturn will pop into Pisces on the 27th of November and will be in your house of money, resources, finance. So whatever went on there in Pisces for the last 2.5 years, Saturn is kind of mopping up. On the picture I've had for everyone is that he's going back into that house. He's dug the foundations. He's kind of started something that you can build on. So he's going in there to put the cement on the foundations to make it ultra stable. So you may find from the 27th of November until he comes back on the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, that the last finishing touches are being put on in terms of your finances, your resources, everything you need to live. Okay, and that will be carried over back when he returns on Valentine's into your environment. And then, excuse me, Saturn will be continue to work through there for the next 2.5 years within your environment. Now, the other thing that you have that I spoke about is you have a trine to Uranus, okay, in your 5th house. Now, that is a house of children, sexuality, pleasure, creativity, can be gambling. Um, but it's sudden, unexpected change. It's a house of fertility, so can denote pregnancy. It may be that you or someone close to you, you know, sisters, brothers, cousins, friends, unexpectedly have an arrival. Um, you know, they're pregnant and you need to change your daily routines to give the support that's needed there. It can be as simple as that. It can be that there's sudden changes in how you see your creativity, how you want to get that pleasure from being creative. So it can be your hobbies, you know, there's unexpected change there. There's a shift. And Uranus only makes these big changes so that you can have that independence, that liberation, that freedom to be who you are. So you could have those being looked at, you know, in your environment, having that stress on because you're having to make changes to accommodate the things that you really want to do that are creative, or with children, and changes in your routine. The other thing that you have that I didn't speak about in the main thing is you've got Pluto in your 1st house. So Pluto is the great transformer, lord of the underworld, bringing massive change. So with Pluto there, it's going to be dealing with transforming you at an individual level. It can be your body, it can be your mind, it can be your emotions, it can be your soul, it can be your character, your body, any of that. So with Pluto trining Uranus in the house of children, it could well be, and the need for to build good solid foundations in your environment, in your everyday. It could be that there's a baby on the way or a baby just been born. But it could also be this birth of this creative project that turns into a business where you need to change your environment, that then in fact changes you. And with Saturn going back into your 2nd house, it could be bringing, you know, the fruition of the changes to your finances there before it comes back in February. But definitely a digging down of the foundations. So, you know, whatever your ideals are for your everyday life, your environment, it's also short travel, you know, about your travel and communication, all those ideals, your imagination, you're dreaming about that. You know, hold the tension of what you want with the reality of what you can do, you know, the constraints on your time, on your finances, on your, you know, your vitality, your energy. So hold those tensions and there will be creative breakthroughs with Uranus in your 5th over time. Okay, that's what I have for you, Aquarius. Hello, Pisces. So you're going to be having this Saturn retrograde in your 2nd house of finances, money, your resources, everything you need to kind of look after yourself physically in this world and to survive. So Saturn has been there since the 25th of May and will depart Aries to retrograde back into Pisces on the 1st of September. So from the 25th of May until now, have a look at what has changed, what has shifted. You know, what shifts, what pressures have you had around the areas of finances, money, resources? And this can be everything you own, you know, materially own, because Saturn would have been bringing things to bear. And often when it arrives in houses such as the money, where we need that for our survival, that can first appear as fear, worry, anxiety about your finances. Have you got enough to make the rent, to pay your bills, to, you know, projecting off into the future? Can you manage that? Okay. So it is a very difficult kind of place to have Saturn, but the thing is Saturn is seeking to bring wisdom, to bring discipline. So it may take hard work. It may take time to build those foundations that bring in enough money. It may be there's been real disruption because you have Uranus in your fourth house of home, family, roots, in your foundations, So it could be that disruption there, that worry, that fear about your home. Perhaps you have had difficulties paying your rent or your mortgage. Perhaps you're concerned about the security of your home, concerned about your family's needs, and meeting the bill for children and husbands, wives, partners, uncles, aunts. No, you shouldn't be paying for them. But you see what I'm saying? Now, in your fourth house, you would have had, or big disruption will come. Uranus is the big disruptor, okay? He brings a bit of chaos. He brings a bit of, chaos. It's the word. And it's often sudden change. So you may have already experienced it, this sudden change in the area of your home, family, roots, okay? But be assured that Uranus, the same as Saturn, although there is disruption, he is the great awakener. He's to do with liberation, freedom. And it's in sextile to Saturn, and Saturn is the one who bears down, constricts, restricts, says no, whereas Uranus is going to be that liberator there. Okay, so it's going to bring you the exit that Saturn doesn't give it, that, during the birth, when I was talking about the birth, there's no escape. So if you feel like there's no escape and no way forward with your finances, and it is particularly about paying your rent, paying your bills, maintaining your home and your family and all that entails, just know that Saturn is just bringing wisdom, and Uranus will bring that light at the end of the tunnel. There will be a kind of liberation, but Uranus moves slowly. So this is a 7-year period. And Saturn, when it returns in February, after its retrograde, returns back into Aries, that will be February. He'll be there for two and a bit years. Okay. So it could be with Saturn and with Neptune, it could be that you've got a bit of an idealistic view of how to earn your money, how to bring the income in. We do have the ruler of your first house, of your ascendant, in the fifth house, exalted, okay, in Cancer. So that is a very fertile place. It's an extremely fertile place. It could be that another child is about to be born, which is giving you that stress about your finances and the home and family. But it could also be a good omen for you being able to create a home business. Maybe this is the breakthrough with Uranus, that there is a business that you're working with Saturn in your second house to build the finances, to have that business at home, to have that outlet of creativity at home. You may be looking of ways forward where you can free up time and free up yourself to spend more time with your family. We've also got in your 12th house, Pluto, which is in sextile with Saturn and Neptune and in a trine with Uranus. So these are huge energies. Now, Pluto is the big transformer. So it could be that Pluto, over this period of Saturn's retrograde, brings up, he's lord of the underworld. He brings things that are hidden, and we've got Uranus in your private, your inner, your roots, the deepest places of you in your fourth house. So it could be that Pluto brings something up that gives you that freedom, that breaks you free. It could be that Pluto shows you your inner critic, that tells you can't make it financially, that shows up those unconscious patterns that were built in from family. Perhaps you came from a family that struggled with money. Perhaps you learned when you were young that it is difficult to make money, maintain. There could be patterns coming from there that Pluto and Uranus working in that beautiful trine can actually break through and break you free of, so that you have the confidence and self-esteem to work along with Saturn and build those foundations in your finances and your resources. But you do need to hold those tensions of the Neptunian ideals, dreams, imagination, and make sure that they're doable, they're practical. How can I bring those dreams, that creativity, that those ideals, how can I bring them by connecting to the divine, to my spiritual, to my guides? And the fourth house is also roots, can be ancestral work. How can I connect with all that, but bring those things into reality? You know, and are my practical needs being met? They're questions that you may need to ask, because your ideal may be constricted, restricted by the reality. You know, if you want to give up your day job to do something spiritual at home, there needs to be practicalities with that. There needs to be an assessment of how far your money can stretch, and can you make it happen? Okay, so I hope you understand what I'm saying. But also with Pluto in that trine to Uranus, there could be, it is the house of hidden things. So Pluto could be bringing up, which is kind of out of your control, secrets, hidden things within the family. That could be the sudden disruptor. If that happens, just hold your own, speak your truth, have confidence, and you can move through those things within your family. Whatever has caused chaos, there will be a liberation in that. But if you walk with integrity, there'll be a freedom that comes from that. Okay, Pisces, that's what I have for you.